We're here in Napa Valley with Jon Fine, a brilliant columnist from BusinessWeek. I'm a huge fan, so I'm thrilled
clearly
to
he's never read
have
my
you.
work.
Yeah, clearly. So I think one of the really interesting things about just the evolution of media and journalism is, you've got this monthly column, a weekly column. Wish it was monthly, probably sometimes, and you're blogging as well, and so you're building this audience for yourself, and then you've also got the audience of BusinessWeek. So. Can you talk a little bit about what's it like for a reporter today?
Well, I think if you're a reporter today, and I'm not saying anything particularly mind-blowing or original here, but you have to be fluent in every possible way, every possible platform. I was trying not to say platform, but I see no other way. Because no one is really sure what media is going to become. And at the same time, there are other places where there are other kind of holes in the media landscape you can fill with stuff. There are blogs, there's TV. I mean, I also do TV for CNBC. And there's just all these, it's essentially the same skill set, but I mean, you kind of do it in a slightly different way each time. The blog is a little more informal. The blog is a little faster. I can write about, if I'm really irritated about, some horrible rock band, I can write about it on my blog. I really wouldn't do it in my column. And obviously TV is its own skill set, of its own. But that's video, which is also going to go on the web, which is obviously...
Media whore! He's such a media whore.
So that
he can't help it.
And so TV is becoming web video, which is becoming this whole other thing, for the web. So basically, everyone, how to put this, if you're in media and you want to be employed tomorrow or next week with all that's going on, you have to understand and use all these platforms, but it's also just fun. I mean, it's just fun to do stuff and create stuff and to do it in a slightly different way.
Now you think that and I think that, but do all journalists think that, or is there kind of this gulf, this divide, and is it generational, or what's it based on?
I mean, it's partly generational, and there's something to be said. I mean, look, I'm essentially a print guy. I still think that, a long, well-written article is kind of, I look at news coverage from long print, long-form print versus television, versus like the quick hits on television. I mean, to me, there's just no comparison. And something is being lost, perhaps. But at the same time, other things are being gained. I mean, there's real-time feedback, or something like real-time feedback. There's variations of interactivity. There's differing levels of formality. But at the same time, you do ask people to learn how to do things differently. And some people are really expert in one weird savant-like thing, and they're not very good at anything else. I mean, to use a completely different example, David Letterman, who I've never met. I mean, from what I understand, he's kind of this generally asocial guy, a bit awkward, doesn't really like people. It turns out that he's good at one thing in the world that gets him, $20 million a year or whatever. Some people are just good at one thing.
What's his one thing?
Well, being a wise ass on late night TV and interviewing people in a very specific way. Some people are just good at long print articles. Some people are good at TV. I don't know which one I'm best at, or if I'm good at any of them for that matter.
Well, you're obviously employed, so
I am
you're doing something right.
Yes, the last check cleared. It was great.
That's right. Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting that you wrote about recently was how the shift in local media and sort of local papers is leading to an evolution in that medium. A lot of local regional papers are shutting down. Lots of people are getting laid off. And meanwhile, you've got sites like The Gothamist sort of taking over regional coverage to a degree. So
bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about really is the kind of disaggregation of the metro newspaper. The ad model is completely broken down. Craigslist destroyed classifieds. There's all these other places for other people to advertise in a more targeted way. The downside is that, I do think that in the short term, the media environments in those places are impoverished. The upside, the positive view is that there are individual bloggers, that can go gangbusters in local areas, and they can do little bits and pieces. There are some good examples out there. In New Jersey, there's a site called barista.net that does a remarkably good job with, 4 or 5 people, covering stuff in a state. I grew up there, so I can say this. It's a giant suburb. So it's impossible for a newspaper to cover in a traditional way. But, people, that have some personality, that have some voice especially, and that are kind of good at it, there's a lot of wide open space for them. Obviously, there isn't really a business or ad model yet. Obviously, I don't know if blogging, in the sense that seems to be required, is really sustainable. I don't know if people can do 6 to 8 blog posts a day, every day or 5 days a week for 20 years without their heads exploding. And I mean that in all seriousness. But
So-
there are spaces opening as the giants are collapsing.
So, last question. I mean, one of the premises of this idea of personality and the Personality Project, which is kind of sharing the same idea across multiple industries, is that you can't really survive anymore without being that individual and having that individual voice. I mean, what advice would you have for somebody who's maybe an aspiring journalist, or even somebody who's in the PR and marketing field on the other side of things, who's just trying to kind of succeed in this new media world? I mean, what have you figured out along the way that you could share?
I'm not sure I figured out a whole lot, but what I generally tell people if they're like, I'm just starting into journalism, what do I do? And I usually say, find one thing in the world that you're absolutely obsessed with, that you absolutely adore, and write a blog about it. Become the best blog about chocolate chip cookies. Become the best blog about obscure funk 45s from the 70s. Actually, that probably exists. Because you will get noticed. I mean, and you will. You're essentially practicing, voice. You're practicing reportage. You're practicing writing, and you're doing it in a way that doesn't feel like homework. In a way that actually feels like something that you're really enthused about. Because you're enthused, your voice comes out, and because your voice comes out, I mean, there's more of a premium on that now. I think. I hope. Than just sort of being able to do the classic AP style, valuable, yes, informative, yes, but kind of colorless news story. I mean, I think it's better to have something that pops out, some kind of voice. I guess you would obviously call it personality.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that applies to marketing, but I mean, well, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, a lot of the more famous marketers now, they've, again, I hate saying this, built the brand. And they build it in public appearances. They build it through blogs. They build it through having a blog.
The personal
They build
brand,
it through
right?
books. Yeah, which I guess you know something about as well.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it is the wave of the future. So thanks so much.
My pleasure,
It's great
Rohit.
to talk to you.